As a busy dad, handheld gaming has been my safe space for the past 3 years. On the face of it, this is basically just a bigger and better Switch, but there's absolutely no way you want to give this one to your kid. Because the operating system hasn't changed, it could fool you into thinking this is less of an upgrade than it actually is. It's pretty straightforward to transfer over your old Switch profile onto the Switch 2, and when you do, you'll be met with the exact same UI you've been staring at for the past 7 years. Holding it in your hands for the first time though, you'll realise just how big an improvement this is. This is by far one of the sleekest and most premium feeling devices I've used in a long time. While many PC handhelds currently on the market can definitely compete with the Switch 2 in terms of horsepower, none of them do so with this level of finesse. From the sturdy and flexible kickstand to that very well built and secure cartridge cap, Nintendo has really stepped it up on the hardware front. That decision to go with an LCD display rather than an OLED was controversial and probably still is to a lot of people, but it's immediately clear that this is a beautifully crisp, vibrant display, and that LCD was definitely the right choice because it gives us access to that VRR. Who really knows if Mario Kart is consistently running at that 120Hz? It certainly feels like it because of that variable refresh rate. It's one clue as to why Mario Kart World made such a great release title for the Switch 2. It's such a zippy game with so many things happening at all times, it really can become quite overwhelming and frenzied until you get used to the experience. I am curious to see what role Nintendo's DLSS upscaling technology is playing in this experience, because I did get a sense that I was getting a bit of a migraine as I was playing Mario Kart World for the first time. Hopefully it's just something that I need to adjust to and not something that's going to be a widespread problem. Of course, you are sacrificing some of those deep darks on the OLED, but because this is a HDR display as well, it will compensate for that with its high dynamic range. Yakuza 0 is a game that demonstrates both the pros and cons of this decision. Those stunning vibrant lights in fictional Tokyo just look absolutely amazing on this display. And then when you go into a darker area, you can definitely see that it's not a pure black. Honestly, the Steam Deck OLED will probably look better to a lot of people, and in fact the Legion Go's LCD display is pretty close if not better than the Switch 2 as well. But if you are just coming to this from the OG Switch, even an OLED model, you're going to be so impressed. The second area where the Switch 2 is a huge improvement over the OG, Joy-Con controllers snap perfectly into place with minimal fuss, and they don't ever feel like wobbling or coming out, giving the impression of a truly solid slab of console that you've got in your hands. The thumbsticks have much greater range than pretty much any joysticks I've ever used. Again, this is perfectly demonstrated in Mario Kart World, where just moving from one side of the track to the other feels like quite a big swipe with your thumb, but you also get a lot of minute control if you just want to kind of wiggle the controller slightly. I have found that particularly when using the controller adapter, my thumbs have tended to sort of slip forward on the controller, so I have to kind of constantly readjust my grip. So far, that's just one reason why I'm finding the Switch 2 a little less comfortable than something like the Steam Deck. The fact this does just look like a slate of carbon makes it a little bit more portable and easier to slip into a bag, but the fact that there are no grips on those Joy-Con controllers definitely makes it harder to hold on to. The underside of the controller feels like a wonderfully smooth pebble, but depending on how you hold the device, they will jut into your palms and leave quite a red mark after a prolonged session. If you are playing this in bed, you'll probably notice it more than if you're just sat on the couch. But maybe, just don't be as lethargic as me. The rumble features on the Joy-Con are one area where Nintendo has definitely upped its game. It's not as conspicuous and in your face as something like the DualSense on the PlayStation 5. It's more of like a subtle haptic quality that just gives that oomph to games like Mario Kart World. Mouse mode is one of the other big features on the Nintendo Switch 2, and again here I don't get the sense it's going to be the most ergonomic or comfortable way of gaming, but just zipping about the UI, they are definitely very responsive, and it's going to be exciting to see what developers come up with. Unfortunately, I don't have any games that are well suited to mouse mode at the moment. I'm definitely not going to pay for the Welcome Tour, and I was hoping that some of the older Switch 2 games like Pokemon Snap or Civilization 6 would have mouse support. Unfortunately, that's not the case, so we're going to have to hope for an upgrade in the future. There may well be a good reason for this, but it does feel like not supporting Civilization 6 with mouse mode is just a cheap way of forcing you to get Civilization 7. As primarily a handheld gamer, you'll forgive the state of my TV, which has been beaten up over a couple of house moves and also by my son in his younger years, But until he gets older, we're not going to get a new TV. For that reason, I haven't spent a huge amount of time playing the Switch 2 in docked mode. However, I would recommend setting the dock up as soon as possible, especially if you've got an Ethernet connection, which will speed up the downloads, because it just takes a long time to actually set up your Nintendo Switch and download all of your games. It's kind of annoying that it just tries to transfer everything that you got onto your Switch 2, so I had to go through manually and just decide which games I wanted to stop downloading on the Switch 2. But we got there in the end. One thing I wasn't expecting was that after this process, picking up the Nintendo Switch 2, it was so hot. This thing really puts out some heat, and I can see why that dock needs a fan inside to keep it cool. This is going to be a real concern for third-party dock manufacturers, so I'm very interested to see if any of them actually work. One thing to watch out for is that the fan might sort of make a high-pitched sound, which can be a bit annoying to some people. I can't actually hear it because I have pretty bad tinnitus anyway. This was, however, a great chance to give the Joy-Con steering wheels a bit of a run out. Hopefully my son will be able to actually use these, and I'm very grateful to Nintendo for adding in all of the nice accessibility features like auto steer and auto accelerate, which are going to make Mario Kart World definitely playable for my 3-year-old. There's absolutely no rush to go out and buy a Pro Controller. The Pro Controller from your previous generation will work, as will your old Joy-Cons, so yeah, I'm definitely making do with them for now. Let's talk about the games themselves. Mario Kart World is the only first-party Switch 2 game that you can actually buy upon release, and as I say, you can see why, because it's such a showcase of all the Switch 2's capabilities. It's not just a showpiece for what that display can do, but also what the Switch 2 can do in terms of audio. While the sound system might not get as loud or as bassy as some other handhelds out there, what's really amazing is how immersive the sound actually feels. There's so many sounds going on at once in Mario Kart World, from that sort of jazz soundtrack, the sounds of the cars and the environment, but they've done an amazing way of balancing it all out to feel very immersive, like you're really part of the world. As far as I'm aware, the software is actually helping with this to create almost a kind of soundscape around you so you can hear things in your periphery and from behind, and it actually really works. When you open up Mario Kart World, you'll see the menu alongside a little animation of your character just driving through the world. And all you have to do is press plus and you can just dive straight in exactly where that character is and pick up and just explore. Nintendo have definitely done this to immediately show you how low the loading times are on this console. And that's something that you will become incredibly apparent of if you boot up an old Switch game on your Switch 2. Pokemon Snap finally lives up to its name. You get into everything so quickly, and yeah, it makes a big difference because this game used to take ages to load the simplest menu. This is a game that also looks absolutely stunning on the Switch 2's new display. It definitely feels like Nintendo is running Switch games in their docked mode when in handheld on the Switch 2. Pokemon has never looked as good as it does on Pokemon Violet, and it runs at a stable frame rate, which makes the experience so much better than it was before. Tears of the Kingdom is stunning as well, although I have to say, I'm still not entirely sure it's worth paying £7 or £8 just for a bit of a graphics upgrade. All in all though, it does feel like Nintendo were underselling the backwards compatibility a little bit, because even games like Fire Emblem, which have absolutely no upgrade in them at all, feel so much better on the Switch 2. When it comes to third-party titles and ports, I picked up Yakuza 0 to really see what was possible. It may be a game where you do notice the limitations of an LCD compared to an OLED, but it also paints a beautifully vibrant picture of Tokyo at night. I'm not sure what frame rate it's running at, but everything feels so smooth and snappy, especially in those fast-paced action scenes, and it really is a joy to play. This Yakuza 0 remaster will eventually release on PC, and it will run very similarly, if not better, than it runs on the Switch 2 now. But the sheer convenience of just buying a game, knowing that it's definitely going to work on your platform, booting it up, and not having to tweak any settings or worry about fan noise, it's really a huge quality of life improvement. A lot of comparisons between PC handhelds and the Switch 2 are probably going to miss that point, that there is absolutely zero fan noise here. And it's honestly just such a game changer to me, especially playing games in bed with my wife and my son in the room. Of course, the Switch 2 has now added GameCube to its online collection, and I've been playing the Wind Waker on an emulator for the past few months. I have to say that it's actually a better experience on my emulator than it is on the Switch 2 online, but it's definitely amazing if you don't have an emulator, you're not interested in that kind of stuff. I also appreciate how easy it is to swap the controls, like flipping the direction of the camera, which is something that you'll probably kill me for doing, but I always have to do. There's so much that I could still talk about with the Nintendo Switch, and I will do over the next few months. I still haven't had a chance to check out Game Chat because none of my friends have a Nintendo Switch 2, so I'm pretty glad that I didn't buy a camera right away because it feels like it'd be completely useless until other people actually have Switch 2s. But I know enough now to say that this does feel like a huge step forward for the Switch and handheld gaming in general. If you have been following the PC handheld space, maybe you've got a Steam Deck, you're not going to be blown away when you pick up this device. But if you've been waiting to see what Nintendo could do before moving over to one of those platforms, well, it's been worth the wait. All of those other devices can match and in some aspects exceed what Nintendo are able to do with the Switch 2. What they lack is the polish, ease of use, and of course those Nintendo first party titles. That being said, I still don't think there's really enough there to go out and rush to buy a Switch 2 at this time. The only real new game is Mario Kart World, and that might not be to everybody's tastes. That's completely fine. One thing I would just be a little bit wary of is the fact that prices on every other system seem to be going up rather than down as these devices age. With the economic climate being so unpredictable, this might actually be the cheapest the Nintendo Switch 2 will ever be. In any case, it's great that the original Switch is going to be supported for some time to come, because you don't really want to be giving the Switch 2 to your kids. If you like this video, then please do give it a like and subscribe. I took a day off work to make it, so thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in a bit.